Good afternoon, Gregory's Guru here again. And oh my gosh, it's July already. Who'd be thinking about Christmas in July? Well, we are here at Gregory's because we want to get you guys prepared. Start thinking about the holidays and how you can capture some additional sales. Not to say this idea can't be used throughout the year, but typically you see what we're going to show you today during the holidays. Usually you're going to run this late November, early December, and it's called a cookie walk. Well, what the heck is a cookie walk? That's a goofy name. Well, quite honestly, we got the idea from maybe in your town you have a church bake sale, or the women of the church, or men for that matter, bake up all kinds of different cookies and candies and whatnot, and they have a bake sale usually right around the end of November or early December, and people come and buy several different kinds of cookies and candies and whatnot so they don't have to bake at home. And let's face it, today's consumer has less and less time, with usually two people working in the household, or maybe it's a single parent family. They just don't have the time to do the baking like they used to do years ago. Well, we thought, well, why not just take that concept and bring it into either your bakery or your in-store supermarket and have your own cookie walk or bake sale. And how do we go about that? Well, you know, that takes a little bit of planning. Gregory's offers over 30 varieties of mini cookies, which are a great idea. Here I've got a small tray of a few of our cookies. I'm going to take you through some of the different varieties that we have. By all means, we're not going to go through everything today. This video would be much too long. But I want to get you kind of thinking about how you'd go about doing this and what kind of sales you can achieve from it. So it all starts with the planning process. A cookie walk, let me tell you first what that's all about. What it is kind of like I said, it's like the church bake sale. You're going to bake up all kinds of different varieties of cookies, decorate them in different ways, maybe add some candies, brownies, whatnot to it. Then you're going to create an event out in your store or in your bakery where you're going to have all these varieties of products that you've produced, and the customer can come in and pick and choose what they want, how many they want of each. Maybe they want just a few of this one, a couple dozen of that, whatnot. Maybe they want all of one kind. So you're going to lay it out in a fashion that you're going to be able to allow the customer to come through the line or whatever, however you lay it out, so that they can see all the different varieties and pick and choose. Most people sell it by the pound. If you don't have the ability to do that, you can also sell it by the container. So for example, you could have a container like this and have a pre-priced amount for this, or you could fill it up and put it on the scale and sell it that way as well. So once you try to figure out how many cookies you think you're going to sell, then it's time to figure out how many varieties. Typically a store will order from Gregory's around 10 to 12 different varieties of cookies, and they can make anywhere from 15 to 20 different varieties of cookies out of that. So for example, I've got a butter spritz cookie here that we're going to show you how to make. But we've got it done a few different ways. Here we've got a thumbprint that we've made out of it, where we dipped it in sugar before we baked it, and then once it came out we topped it with a white coating. This particular one I'm going to show you how to make is actually a turtle, a caramel turtle, which is one of the best sellers out there. Here we've taken the butter spritz cookie and we've dipped it in pecans and baked it. Once it's fully cooled, we warm up some caramel and we actually put the caramel on top of each one of these. This is my favorite, and it's quite popular. Now some of these cookies cost a little more than others. You know, obviously this has pecans on it. So typically what you want to do is come up with an average price point, $6.99 a pound or whatnot, and you know, in most cases people aren't going to buy all one kind. Sometimes that does happen, but it's offset by somebody else maybe buying something that's a little less expensive. This one is probably one of the more tedious to make because we've got several steps involved. I'll show you some other ones here in a minute where they're pretty fast to make. So once you get your caramel on there, then what we're going to use is what's called a coating chocolate. The reason we use that over an icing is that once it gets on the cookie, it actually sets up, and you can stack these I'll show you on a tray how you do that. Or even when the customer takes it home, they don't stick to each other. So it kind of keeps the integrity of the cookie. So we're just going to drizzle on top here the coating chocolate. You can see the decorating bag, we put a very fine hole in there so that we can get a nice drizzle. Now you don't have to write down every single one of these varieties I'm going to show you. We've got a nice packet here that has pictures of how to do the different cookies, you know, how long to bake them based on what kind of oven you have, and how to decorate them. So how do you beat out those church ladies? Well, you got to make sure that you decorate these nice. If you just bake up some cookies and don't really kind of make them fancy, the customer's not going to really look at it as a really big value. And I quite honestly wouldn't worry too much about price point, because if you make them nice, they will pay a little bit more. So let's look at this packet for a second. We talked about it a little bit. So what's in this packet? We've got several pages of what to do. And then in the back we've got pictures of how to stage cookies and whatnot. And then we will actually post some of this on our Facebook page, but this kind of shows a little bit of how to set up a cookie walkout in your store, which I'm going to do kind of a mock-up one here in the lab for you real quick once we get going. But let me just go through a couple of varieties for you first. This is our Black Forest. You'll notice I put a little bit of red sugar in there because this is a cherry chocolate cookie, and then on half of it I put that same kind of chocolate drizzle on there. This is a great cookie to bake with something a little lighter because it's chocolate. It's kind of hard to tell when it's done, but if you bake it with some lighter ones, it's a little easier. Here's our milk chocolate mini mini chocolate chip. We've also got a semi-sweet one as well. Here I put the same kind of drizzle on there. You'll notice that just that little bit of extra work gives you a nice look. Now this one's my favorite as well because when I was a young lad, I used to buy those oatmeal sandwich cookies when I was a golf caddy. So what we've done is we've taken our oatmeal mini cookie and we put frosting in the center and then rolled it in a decorate. Now for the holidays you could put different colors on there depending on if you're doing Valentine's Day or Christmas or whatnot. This is one of the more popular ones. It's a thumbprint. It's a peanut butter cookie, and we just put the chocolate stars on there. You can use kisses, but if you use the stars, you can actually put them on before they go in the oven. If you use the kisses, you have to put them on afterwards because the kisses can't handle being baked in the oven. But these particular ones, we did put them on and then baked them in the oven. We talked a little bit about the spritz cookies. Here's even another variety where we put some almonds on there. We actually carry an almond spritz and a butter spritz. This is actually the almond spritz. These are chocolate spritz cookies, and here I've done a turtle and as well as I've done it with almonds on top. We've looked at those already. We've got a few brand new varieties. This is a cookies and cream that we used a white coating chocolate on top. So this has white chocolate chips as well as semi-sweet chocolate chips inside. And here again, I'm not showing you every variety that we have. This is another new one we have. It's kind of off that Girl Scout Samoa cookie, but it's what we call a coconut chocolate chip cookie. We put coconut crunch on there, we baked it, and then when it came out, we put the caramel icing, strung that on there, or caramel, and then the chocolate coating chocolate. And this is a birthday cake that we put some rainbow sprinkles on. That tastes just like a birthday cake. You notice we have a lot of different color breaks here, so when you set up your cookie walk, you'll have some nice colors. This is a pistachio one where we put just some donut sugar on top once it was baked. And this is our mini monster cookie. You can see there's a few missing. It wasn't because Cookie Monster ate them, it was because we put them on our tray over here. Here I've got a candy cane. So it actually has crushed up red and green candy canes. So it's got that kind of mint flavor, and then we've got some white coating chocolate on top of there. Here's just a mini molasses ginger cookie. You notice we used a coarse sanding sugar on here that gives it a little bit more of a crystallized kind of a winter look to it. This is just our standard mini sugar cookie. Where in this particular case, thinking about Christmas time, we used red and green sugar, but you can certainly use any colors you want. As you can see, we have plenty of different cookies to choose from. This is a snickerdoodle that we put some cinnamon sugar on top. This is a mini M&M. These actually can be dipped in M&Ms as well. We didn't do that on this particular case. These actually are a very popular flavor. Here's our red velvet, which has, it's kind of a chocolate cookie with red color and the white mini chips, and then I put the white coating chocolate on top. And here's an old standby for the holidays. It's a Mexican wedding cookie, or you could call it a Russian tea cake at different areas. I've heard it called a Swedish heirloom cookie. Basically, it's a pecan cookie that we put some powdered sugar on top. And this is a summertime favorite. It's a almond s'mores cookie, so it's got graham crackers and marshmallow flavoring. We put some almonds on top of there before we baked it, and put the chocolate coating on there. And here's also one of my favorites. It's a maple nut, so it's got a little maple icing on top. Okay, that's kind of a quick snapshot of several of our varieties, right around 18. That's about a little over half of the different ones you can choose from. And here again, if it's your first time, you probably are going to pick about 10 different varieties and go from there. I picked some of the ones, like I talked about, the spritz cookies, where you can come up with some different ideas out of one cookie and whatnot. That's what I would recommend. But here again, I've got visual method sheets that we can send out to all of you, either through an email blast, or if you just want us to print a copy and mail it out to you, we can certainly do that. Okay, now let's set up this cookie walk. All right, now how do we set this cookie walk up? Well, we talked a little bit about planning. We talked a little bit about what kind of cookies we're going to have. That's based on, you know, how many you think you're going to sell. Obviously, if it's your second year, you've got some records and whatnot. What's the next step? Well, the next step is pick a date. We talked a little bit about when would you best do this. Well, if you've got a holiday event at your bakery or store, that's a good day. Typically, you want to do it on a weekend when you've got a lot of traffic in your store. You want to do it early in the season, you know, before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving, because people are going to want to buy those cookies and take them home. And what they typically do is they'll throw them in the freezer and they'll use them throughout the holidays. If you do it too late in the season, a lot of your competitors probably have already had their events, and your customers either have baked their own or whatnot. So this is a good thing to plan, like right before Thanksgiving or like the first weekend in December. Then the next thing you want to make sure you do is do some advertising. You want to do that out a couple weeks ahead of time. Maybe if you've got some kind of a circular you mail out, you definitely want to put that in there. If you call it a cookie walk, kind of you want to talk to a little bit about what that is. I kind of like the bake sale name over cookie walk, but you could, you know, use them interchangeably. Then you also want to do some in-store signage in your bakery or in your store. If you are in a grocery store or even in a bakery, get some bag stuffers, and you want to make sure that you're doing this, you know, 2-3 weeks out before the event. Make sure you staff up for it. There's a little bit of extra time that you're going to need to spend to prepare for this. You could, if you need to, if you have no other option, you could bake some of these up ahead of time and freeze them. That certainly works. Obviously, it's a cookie, so it's got roughly a 5 to 7 day shelf life at ambient temperature, so you could plan 2-3 days ahead. There's no way you're going to be able to bake all these varieties and get them all decorated the day of or even the day before, so make sure that you plan ahead here. Make sure that you've got somebody that's knowledgeable and energetic, that's a good selling person, that's going to be out with the customers, talking to them about what you have. Make sure they know what kind of cookies you have. And it's a good idea in your advertising to actually list the different varieties if you can. It gives people kind of an idea what's going on and what to expect when they get there. It's not a bad idea to put the price point out there. Different price points work. I've seen anything from $5.99, which is really on the low end, $6.99, $9.99 I've even seen. So depending on what you're going to do as far as decorating, if you're going to do a lot of them, like say the turtle cookie, you want to make sure that you charge enough for those. Okay, what is it going to look like? Well, I've used a lot of different containers. I've seen a fancy plastic, like a cover that goes on a sheet pan. You'd have to order those from a supplier, a bakery supplier. But I've even used just a full sheet box. And what you want to do is have enough table space depending on what you've got for varieties. You can put more than one variety in a box. Ideally, if you want to do a big event, you're going to want to put one variety in each box, and then you'd line these up. Now this is an 8-foot work table here. You can get about 5 boxes if you're going to run them this way, about 3 boxes if you're going to run them this way. Another idea is just take a simple baking pan, and what we did is we actually just put some wrapping paper. We didn't do the whole thing. We just wrapped the edges and then put a nice pan liner on there. And you can use different colors and line it up like that. So let's just kind of set this up a little bit here, see how this works. So we'll pretend we have 12 to 18 feet here, and we'll pretend that there's more than this many pans. But what you're going to want to do is you can shingle these. That's why we want to use the coating chocolate, because you can shingle things and it doesn't stick to the one behind it. So this is obviously a little more difficult one to shingle, but you want to do nice color breaks. Maybe put the pistachio next to the peanut butter. Obviously there's nut allergies out there, so you probably want to keep the ones that have nuts in the same pan. That way, if anybody's got any concerns about that, and if you're going to put any on the same pan, you can do that. Like I said, you'd probably want to do a half a pan of this, or maybe even a whole pan, depending on how big your event is. You kind of get the idea here. And then, of course, that's our nut pan. This is kind of be more of our festive party pan here. We put our birthday cake ones on there. So you're probably wondering, what the heck am I going to do with all these cookies if they don't all sell? Because we don't want you to sell yourself short. If you're going to put this much time and effort into it, you want to make sure you don't run out. I'll show you in a minute here kind of what you can do with that. Let me just put a couple more cookies on here. You can kind of see how this all gets put together here. So once you get these things all set up, you'll have a row of tables, and then the customers will come in on the other side, and they'll kind of pick and choose as they go. You can bag them up or put them in a container, put them on the scale or whatever you're going to use, and go from there. Okay, I took a little bit of time off camera here to fill up the tray all the way. Now you got to kind of pretend that we've got a 20-foot table or whatever, 8-foot, whatever your size event's going to be. Depending on the size of your event will depend on how many we're going to put on a tray. Obviously, you're not going to just put one row, because a customer could come in and take the whole thing. So you're going to have at least a half a pan, if not a whole pan, of each variety. You can even stack them up if you need to, so that you've got them there. Because once things start getting busy, you're going to want to make sure you got enough out on your display here to help the customer. So, like I was mentioning before we went off, customer comes through, they want to buy some. We've got our containers here, and they're going to say to you, well, I want, some birthday cake cookies. And like here again, you want to make sure that your employee's knowledgeable about, what these different things are. What is a birthday cake cookie? Well, it tastes like a cake. That's what it is. And we've got some sugar cookies. We're going to get 3 of those, and I really like these mint ones, so we're going to get half a dozen of those. And we red velvet, that I'm going to get about 4 of those. Oh, these coconut ones. Yeah, I love those Girl Scout cookies. I think I'm going to get a bunch of these. Well, maybe I'm going to get, I think I'm going to get 12 of those. You can see your tray starts to diminish quickly if people start buying. Because you know what? They may want to bring more than one container home. And these sandwich cookies, they're awesome. But they look really filling, so maybe only 4 of those. You can see I filled up my container pretty fast. You might need some bigger containers, or you can do more than one. And like I mentioned earlier, if you've got the ability to sell these by the pound using a bakery scale where it can print a label out, that's ideal. Then you can set a per pound price, and kind of like I said, you want to kind of average out your costs. Or you can sell it by the container. You know, whatever you can fill in this container, you can get for this price. That's kind of how that looks. I mentioned a little earlier, you know, what do I do with all these extra cookies? What if I got a bunch of them left over? Well, you know, you can sell these throughout the whole season because your event is actually early in the season. So you can pan them up into containers like this, or I've even got some smaller ones. You could sell them for a little bit lower price point. Maybe you don't mix and match this guy. You just put, you know, here's 3, here's 6. Maybe it's just 9 cookies in this little guy for a smaller price point. And if you use the coating chocolates and the different toppings that we have here, these will go in the freezer for you. You can put them in the freezer and then pull them out throughout the season, and it kind of works out pretty good. You also can have some trays out there. One thing I would recommend during your event is to have some pre-packaged trays, like this particular one here we have. You know, depending on what size, this I believe is a 12-inch tray. That way, if your customer doesn't want to wait, or it's really busy, or you know they just don't want to pick out their own, they've got one that they can just grab and take to the register and pay for it that way. All right. Well, we hope that you enjoyed our kind of our instructional video. Like I said, we've got visual method sheets that show you step by step how to make all these different cookies. Certainly contact your Gregory sales rep, or you can contact me as well. And we can help you get started with this whole thing if you've got any questions of how to do it. It all comes down to planning and good advertising, energetic people out there, making sure that you decorate things up so that they're very attractive, and you should have a very successful event. And one thing I wanted to mention before I go, and it's actually on the last page of our little packet here, it's from my friend Cookie Monster, and he says, sometimes me think, what is friend? And then me say, friend is someone to share the last cookie with. So I'll share my cookie with you. Take care.